Hello and welcome to Inside Sports. I'm your host, Todd Blackstock. We have a great show for you today as former St. Louis Ram and Arizona Cardinal Pro Bowler Aeneas Williams will join us in studio. Plus, we'll go behind the scenes from the Bob and Weave Ball benefiting the Isaac Bruce Foundation and find out Isaac's secret to longevity in the NFL. So stick around for this and much more coming up next on Inside Sports. And welcome to the show. Isaac Bruce was a charter member of the glory days of the St. Louis Rams when they were known as the greatest show on turf. He played almost his entire career in St. Louis, followed by a brief stint in San Francisco. Well, recently we had a chance to catch up with Isaac as he continues his work with the Isaac Bruce Foundation at the Bob and Weave Ball. Let's take a look. Isaac Bruce is one of the storied wide receivers in NFL history. He has the second most yards receiving, only behind Jerry Rice. Isaac was one of the greatest on the field and off the field as well. This is a great event, the Bob and Weave Ball, part of the Isaac Bruce Foundation, and it was always important to you as a player and now as an alumni of the league to always give back to the community. Has it been in your heart all your life?
You know what? I was taught at a very young age to give back, to give, and I think the Isaac Bruce Foundation is doing a really good job, serving its community, serving our generation, and we're just getting started.
What is the focus of the Isaac Bruce Foundation?
Definitely education. Education is at the heart of everything we do. We've teamed up in the past with Ready Readers, teaching kids about a healthy lifestyle at a young age, so we can put that seed on them, on the inside of them, and have it grow up to be a large cedar one day.
He used to come to the restaurant and eat all the time, bring everybody with him, so he's a fun guy.
One thing about Isaac, he wants to eat healthy.
Yeah.
So if he's going to your restaurant,
We used to serve healthy food, so he used to love coming there and bring everybody with him.
On this evening, Dennis Ingram represented and donated organic instant gold coffee, and it was great. There were lots of great food and drinks at the gala, with items like these tenderloin bruschettas from Mike Shannon's restaurant. Tim McLean from Ham's Deli in Old Town St. Charles donated dozens of fresh, healthy wraps, sandwiches, and he was excited to help the cause.
Nights like this mean a lot to me, near and dear to my heart. And right now I've got chills right now, being out here 2 or 3 hours, donating my time, donating the funds, to put together some food for this large gala. It means a lot to me, for children, for everything Isaac Bruce is doing right now in the community.
The entertainment was fantastic as well, as the former winners of NBC's The Sing-Off, Pentatonics, performed live.
They just kind of contacted us and asked if we wanted to sing, and we were so down. And we honestly didn't know a lot about the foundation before this, but we've gotten to know it by listening and watching now, and I think it's amazing. And so it's such a special thing to be a part of, and so we're really happy to be here.
How does it make you feel when you go out to these football camps, you give a free clinic or something like that, and you see the joy on the kids' faces?
I think it's big. I mean, we had one here recently in St. Louis. Torrey Holt hosted it with me. Just to see the kids' eyes and the way they light up and just lit up when they see a guy like Torrey Holt teaching them how to be a wide receiver, teaching them how to be a football player, and teaching them how to be a great citizen. I think it was just phenomenal for those guys.
Everything came together after the '99 season. How did it make you feel to be part of the greatest show on turf?
Well, it's something we can hang our hats on. I was when I went to San Francisco for my last 2 seasons. I would always find myself telling those guys about the times that we spent here with Marshall, with Orlando Pace, those guys in together, and what we had, and how we could pretty much score from anywhere on the field. I was so not proud, but very pleased to be part of a situation that took place that would be forever stamped on the NFL.
After the '99 season, we played the Vikings in the playoffs. I remember one of the first plays of the game, I think it was the first play of the Rams offense, you had like a 75-yard touchdown. It ignited the crowd, and it was just blazing trails there through the rest of the playoffs.
Well, you know what? The Lord showed me his goodness that day, because right at pregame, I pulled a hamstring and really was thinking I wouldn't play, but just to go out and just to perform the way we did as a unit for the first playoff game here in St. Louis in a very long time, I think we did well.
I grew up a Minnesota Vikings fan, and I remember the greatest show on turf ruining my team's dreams a couple of times. So I definitely used to watch him growing up, and you talk about a guy who played extremely hard, did the right thing, and an even better person. It says a lot about who he is as a man.
And in the Super Bowl, when he caught the 73-yard touchdown pass, I just wanted to ask you, was that ball underthrown, or was it supposed to be where you're going to come back on that ball? Because I know Kurt Warner got nailed, and I remember I was standing on about the 10-yard line in the end, at the game, and I saw you stop, and you came back for that ball. Was it intended that way, or would you just come back and make the play?
Well, I had half a step on the defender at the time, and like you said, Kurt got nailed on that play. Javon Kurtz kind of hit his right arm as he's throwing the football, so the ball kind of came out a little short. By the grace of God, I made the adjustment on the football. Got great blocks from Oz. Oz finished off a block. I think Ricky Pro was in the mix, and that was it. I just raced to the end zone, outran the Titans, and all the way to the end zone.
Last question. At the end of your career, we had a game here in St. Louis with the 49ers, and you dressed out, played a couple plays, but then you walked off. I remember walked off with some of the Rams personnel, and the crowd was just going nuts. That was the epitome and the end of your career right then. How did that make you feel walking off in front of the St. Louis fans?
I was humbled by it. I had so many great memories in the Dome here in St. Louis, so many great memories with the fans from Macomb, Illinois, and training camps that we have here. Great times in Earth City. It was just a culmination of a career that was just given to me, and just to have the fans be a part of it, the St. Louis fans here being a part of it, it just ended really well for me, and I was grateful for it.
The Isaac Bruce Foundation has provided over $250,000 in scholarships and grants for student athletes. They provide 3,300 kids with free football clinics and fed over 2,500 families in need. Isaac Bruce doing it on the field and off. It's amazing how generous Isaac Bruce still is after retiring from the NFL. Well, another member of a Rams Super Bowl appearance is live with us in studio. This man was drafted in the 3rd round by the Phoenix Cardinals out of Southern University. He played 10 years with the Cardinals before coming over to the Rams, where he starred 4 more years. This man is a member of the all-decade team of the 1990s and one of the greatest defensive backs in NFL history. At this time, we'd like to welcome Aeneas Williams to Inside Sports. Aeneas, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here, Todd.
So your football career goes all the way back to, I guess it goes back to Louisiana, down on the bayou where, things, Marshall Faulk and a lot of great talent did come out of that region.
Well, unusually for not a heavily populated city or state, there are a number of NFL players that have come there. I started playing football at Harrell Park down in New Orleans when I was 4 years old, dislocated my shoulder when I was 7, broke my first opponent's leg when I was 10, and there was no bounty gate at that time, but it was just loving football and loving getting knocked around. Really enjoyed it at a young age.
Now, what about high school? I understand there was a couple other guys that you went to high school with that made it in the NFL.
It was a number of them. Just out of our secondary, different years that we all graduated, at least 4 of us went on to play in the NFL cornerback. So the cornerback position was kind of a lockdown position at Fortier High School down in New Orleans.
Now, going on to Southern University, you actually didn't get a scholarship or anything, and you actually paid your own way to go to Southern University. And at what point in life did you decide to take on football again, and why didn't you go and play your freshman year?
Well, it starts with a dad and mom. My dad was one of 9 siblings to go and graduate from college. He was the only one. And one of the things he really emphasized with my brothers and I'm the youngest of 3 boys, was how important it was. High school was not the end factor, but the importance of going and graduating from college. His vision was that we would go and graduate from college and be productive citizens. However, once I got to school, my brother Achilles, who's 2 grades ahead of me, my goal was to get out of high school in May. Immediately, I had an apartment with a junior in college as a freshman, summer school, and he wasn't playing football, so everything just about he did, I did. And that's what got me away from football. But it was around a week before the season started, my junior year in college, that I believe God just touched my heart. All of a sudden, I had a desire to play football. Prior to that, there were 2 people for those 2 years, freshman and sophomore years. My Uncle William, every time I went home to New Orleans, he would always say, he says, they call me Nikki. He said, Nikki, why are you not playing football? And I would always say, Uncle, there was a time for that. It's now time for real life. And then I had a teammate who played with me in high school who was also at Southern University. He would ask me periodically, why don't you walk on a football team? And I remember seeing him. His name is Michael Lindsay. And I'm telling you, I would always brush him off. But this particular time, it was September. The weather had just changed. It went from summer heat to that fall weather that I call footballs in the air. And I remember seeing Michael. Michael said, Aeneas, why don't you walk on the football team? And I remember decisively telling Michael, I will walk on the team. He didn't believe me. And all I did, Todd, was went and asked the defense coordinator, can I walk on the team? And it just so happened, I believe God orchestrated that the position I was going out for, the coach was trying to replace that guy for whatever reason. So I ended up starting by the 5th game of the season.
No kidding. And so did it work out to your advantage that you kind of redshirted yourself for a couple of years there, but then you were healthy, you're going in there, then you come out after your 3rd year and you get drafted by the Cardinals in the 3rd round. Mm-hmm. Do you think that helped, or do you think it hurt going for the academics? Because the chances of making it in the NFL is pretty slim, and the fact that you went and got pretty much almost had your degree by football time gave you a little more time to focus on football.
Well, it did. It was a couple of advantages. Number one, as I said earlier, Achilles, my brother, he majored in accounting, so did I. Achilles graduated in 3.5 years with his degree in accounting. And because I was going year-round summer school, I was on pace to graduate in 3 years. When Achilles graduated, he called me back. He said, little brother, slow down. You'll be working the rest of your life. So it was at that time I started trying to figure out who in the world is Aeneas? Because I have a degree in accounting, I'm majoring in accounting. I didn't even like numbers. I was only doing it because I was following him. He was a great role model. But all of a sudden, Todd, it started, I like hitting people. I've liked doing that ever since 4 years old. So getting back on the field, it was sort of an advantage because I already had a solid foundation academically. And the other thing I learned was the power of believing, and that even though I didn't know if they would even allow me to play, believing that I could and taking the steps of what I needed to do to even try. So I made it my one goal. I didn't dress the first game, which was a home game against Alabama State. My goal, once I walked on a week before the season started, was to make the traveling squad and play against Texas Southern. And by the way, I didn't tell my parents I walked on, and I didn't tell my good friends. It wasn't until I knew I was making a traveling squad that next week that I called my parents and I said, are you guys coming? Because my dad is a Southern alum as well. I said, you guys coming to the football game in Houston? They said, well, no, why? I said, because you need to come see your son play. And so those are the things that I learned, the power of believing. And even though it sounds ridiculous, taking steps to do what you believe you desire to do, and then the rest is history.
So you go on and you get drafted in the 3rd round, number 59 overall, by the Cardinals, the Phoenix Cardinals at the time. So I'm sure you were thrilled, to be drafted in the NFL, but you were going to one of the teams, the former St. Louis football Cardinals, that, they weren't one of the top teams in the NFL, but they wanted you to be part of the nucleus. How do you feel about going to the Cardinals off the bat?
Well, it felt comfortable because once I did finally start playing, and at some point after my 2nd year, I realized, I said, man, this is a possibility. I can play at the next level. So I had mentors, and while I was in college, every summer, I'd go home and train at Tulane with some of the pros and college guys that all would come home during the off season, during the summer. Yeah, guess who was one of the quarterbacks throwing the ball when we do our one-on-one with receivers? Peyton Manning. High school, he's coming out there throwing the ball. So you can imagine that. So I brought that up because those mentors, initially, I didn't think I could play at the next level. And I had some guys that would just keep working with me. Todd, I ran a 4.640. And after my 2nd year of playing, my defensive coordinator said in a season-ending summary in a newspaper article, he says, Aeneas Williams is a good football player, but I don't think he'll ever go pro because at best he runs a 4.640. And I can remember, this was in November, when it was time to leave for the fall semester and go home for Christmas and New Year's break. I had a guy on my team by the name of Brian Thomas, who was the fastest human being, even to this day, at least one of the fastest guys I've ever seen in my life. He was the fastest guy on our track team at Southern, and he was the fastest guy on the football team. I went to Brian and I said, Brian, can you help me get faster? And Todd, just like I'm looking at you, and I'm still talking about the power of belief, he looks at me, he says, Aeneas, you can run a 4.340. He said it so convincingly, I believed him. He says, I'm going back home to New Orleans. I'm going to work out at my old high school. I want you to come and train with me and do everything that I tell you. And I did. And then he convinced me that, and this is going into my final season, that spring when we got back to walk on Southern's track team, all my teammates that played football with me that were looking at me, they were laughing at me because I couldn't stay with this guy. He ran a 4.240. But Todd, by the end of that track season, he and I were the fastest two on Southern's team. For the spring scouts, I ran a 4.240.
Wow.
I was a second-rated cornerback behind Todd Light out of Notre Dame in the country. I didn't do so well at the combine, as well as the Senior Bowl, so I ended up going in the lower draft. But I started with the Cardinals from day one. So I look at it as an opportunity that everything that I went through, and as I said, just believing that I could do it and putting the work in. When I got to Arizona, you were one. At that team, I think it was only 30 teams at the time. Was it 32? And to be a part of a team and have a meaningful contribution to start from day one, and for the late Jim Johnson, the defensive back coach at that time, to tell me, you're my starter, and now get this, my first game starting was against the LA Rams.
No way.
And I was scared to death. Flipper Anderson and Aaron Cox, and I got my first interception.
Yeah, and I think he had 54 more after that, and I think 12 or 13 touchdowns along the way. You seemed pretty fast to me when we're on the sidelines watching the intercept and run touchdowns back, from the interceptions. I was wondering if there was like a football gear and then there was like the track gear, because there's some guys that are fast in track, but someone they could beat on the track could catch them from behind in a football game. So I didn't know if there was a different gear there involved with your emotions and when the adrenaline's going like that.
Not necessarily. What happens is that track speed is different. And track guys, they have to have the heart to play the game because someone's always standing in your lane when you're in football. But with Brian Thomas, the guy I told you, once he taught me how to run not just on the track, but on the football field. And so what I started doing, I learned from Jerry Rice as it relates to the touchdowns that I scored with the interceptions, that every pass that Jerry Rice caught in practice, he would run full speed to the end zone. So I started requiring that of myself. So when people start asking me, hey man, what's it like to score a touchdown in a game? And I always tell them, I said, just like practice. Because I always believe how you practice was the clearest indicator of how you would play on Sundays or Mondays.
Then as an integral part of the Cardinals, you were part of, I think, their first playoff win in team and organization history. So you got to live that. I know you were huge. I remember seeing you as a member of the Arizona Cardinals on Sports Illustrated's cover, and you were getting pretty big. And at the height of your career, the Rams traded a second and fourth round pick for you to come here during the middle of their glory days. They had a little run there with the greatest show on turf. How'd you feel about coming over to the Rams at that point in your career?
Well, I have an inside joke with Marshall Faulk. He and I, our lockers worked together, and they could never put anyone in the middle. So we had an empty locker, Marshall and I together. We talked our New Orleans talk, but there's an inside joke with he and I. The Rams gave up a 2nd and a 5 for him and a 2nd and a 4 for me. So I always mess with him about that when I see him, but he always says his contract was bigger, so he slows me down.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
But first of all, to the point with making the playoffs out of 10 years with the Cardinals, going upset Dallas, tremendous. I'll never forget, I knew Phoenix was primed for a team, and the fan base would back them if they had a winner. So I'm not surprised the fan base they have now. Coming here with something that was already established with potential Hall of Famers, Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, Orlando Pace, Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt, and I can go on. To play with these guys, London Fletcher, one of the best players I've ever played with. Still playing, still going strong. I was coming now to be a part of something that was already established and the excellence that was already here, particularly on the offense. And I remember when my wife, Tracy, and I got off the plane, and Coach Lovey, who was the defense coordinator, and Coach Mike Morris, the head coach, one of the first things they said to me, they said, you're going to do to our defense what Marshall Faulk did for our offense. And I'll just never remember those words. And it just was a great run. We got upset in the Super Bowl, but it was one of the best teams, I believe, that's ever been assembled.
Oh, it was incredible. And you were a huge part of getting the Rams to that Super Bowl versus the Patriots. You had a couple picks against Brett Favre in the playoffs. And I think, if my mind serves me right, you had the pick to clinch the game against the Eagles in the NFC Championship. So you obviously came over and accomplished your mission, and I think the Rams were probably pretty excited about that.
Well, it was, and as I said, I truly I praise the Lord for the opportunity, and here's why. So many guys play for teams for so many years and don't have the opportunity to play in the game, and there are a number of people that are down when they lose a Super Bowl. I'm excited. Certainly, it really hurt my heart when we lost, but have the opportunity to get there, and it was in my hometown. I played some of my high school games in the Superdome.
At that field.
I sold popcorn, peanuts, and Cokes at Saints games. So to be there, it was all. My birthday was that week. So, and now the Super Bowl this year is back in New Orleans. This is the first time it's back since we lost there. I just relish all of the opportunities I've been given with these moments in my life.
And just think about all the great players. You were talking about Marshall Faulk and Torrey. You know, we did a story on Isaac Bruce earlier before your segment here. And what a great, I mean, Isaac retires with the second most receiving yards in history. Seems a little bit under the radar. What was Isaac like? You know, as a defensive back, was he just really hard to cover? Was his route running, his speed? What made Isaac so great?
Well, one, there are a number of things. He had the ability, he worked on his craft, and Isaac was consistent. Not only he was fast, but he ran every route at the same pace, but he had elusive hips, the ability to get in and out of cuts with very little hesitation, which made it a lot difficult to break on some of his routes. Fiercely tough, and one of the things most people don't know about Isaac, he's a big-time talker. Isaac talks on the field all the time. Now, you would think, because if you get him, if he's by himself, he's quiet. He won't say a word. You say, man, does this guy talk?
Like pulling teeth.
He absolutely talks, but he's a fierce competitor and one of the toughest players that I've ever played with.
You had the injury, I believe it was in 04. You broke your leg, and I know you messed up your ankle. And, you know, you were still playing tough. I mean, you were still really good. But was the injury to that was that sort of when things, you know, it was time to maybe think about hanging things up on the gridiron?
No, injury came back. I was able to transition to free safety in terms of speed and all those things. I was able to get that back. It just playing 14 years, and in your heart, you know when it's time to transition. It's time, this chapter in your life has been awesome. But when you don't have the heart to now go and put in the off season, because I believe the season is made in the off season. And if that meticulous workout regimen that I had in the off season, if my heart was not in it, it was no need going out trying to do it for any other reason, because my number one goal for playing was to reach my potential individually and collectively as a team.
We got a couple minutes left. You know, you were now the accolades come as your career is over. It's been a couple of years now since you've retired. When Arizona went to the Super Bowl, won the NFC Championship, how special was that for you to get to present the George Halas Award, you know, to the team on behalf of Arizona? Well,
it was surreal, but I had also I was inducted into the Ring of Fame earlier that year, and during the halftime speech, I really prayed and I said, God, what do you want me to say? Even because just for little moments like this, because you know you got thousands of people. They were playing, I believe, San Francisco. They were down at halftime, and I just remember pointing to the rafters that they'll have championship banners up there. This before anything, and I didn't know anything other than this is what I sensed to say. It sounded crazy. The people went crazy. They put it on the website. Had nothing to do with me. Those guys, Kurt Warner, they have very good talent. It's just having a notion that something special is here with this collective group of players, and then to come back and be a part of that NFC Championship Award experience, it was just awesome because I was a part of a team that built maybe part of the foundation, and now these great players had taken it over and finally had gotten it to where it could be the whole time.
You know, Arizona, I mean, you're like one of the most popular sports figures in Arizona, and we love you here in St. Louis too. I know you've got to be torn a little bit, but you did spend 10 years there, and I think if we took too much credit here in St. Louis, you know, Anias Williams is our guy, we'd have some mad people in Arizona.
No doubt, especially they come out on Twitter too, because enormous following on Twitter, but we enjoy it, and I say we, because it's a family thing. My wife Tracy and my 4 children, we miss Arizona, in particular when we see snow on the ground. But it was a great time there, great place here to live, great fans, and to still be a part of just a giving community like St. Louis.
Why did you choose to stay in St. Louis with the weather so great in Arizona and being from New Orleans down there? What's your passion for staying here in St. Louis post-career, and what are you doing now?
Well, one, we just sensed this is where we're supposed to be, and really we believe the Lord really put on our hearts to start a church here, to start a mission, a ministry here. St. Louis is probably one of the most philanthropic cities that we've ever been a part of or even heard of. The community of people that give here is amazing. So every Sunday, every week, we get a chance to minister and be a part of great people growing, connecting with the relationship with Jesus Christ, but also taking church outside the four walls and serving the community. You know, we were down at the Machinist Hall, feeding families this Christmas season, and it's seeing thousands of people come through and just encouraging people, get out. This is what Christ would do. This is the body, reaching out and serving people who need the help and the love of Christ, especially during these time of holidays.
It makes you feel pretty good, doesn't it?
Well, it's twofold. You're serving people, which makes them feel great, but the other people, the feedback that we get, because the Bible says more blessed to give than receive, the people that are serving should get just as much out of the experience as the ones that are receiving. So it's just awesome to not just be able to do it at the Spirit Church, but there's so many other organizations and churches that are doing it as well. And it's just a blessing to be a part of it.
You know, and right here in St. Louis, you're only a couple hours from anywhere you want to go in the nation anyway.
Yeah, it's Midwest, man.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Anias, thank you so much for your time
Thank
and
you.
all the things you do post-career, and thanks for all the great memories on the gridiron.
Thanks for having me, Todd. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break now, but don't go anywhere, as we'll be right back for more Inside Sports after this.
So, you're looking for help with your mortgage. Worried about foreclosure?
We can help you keep your house. All we ask for in return is that you submit to our plans for galactic domination. Sign.
If you're facing foreclosure, talk to the right people. Speak with HUD-approved housing counselors free of charge at 888-995-HOPE.
Clean kitchen surfaces, utensils, and hands with soapy water. 1 in 6 Americans will get sick from food poisoning this year. Keep your family safer. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov.
Well, that's our show for today. We'd especially like to thank our guests, Artiga Photos for the great set pictures, and thank you for watching. I'm Todd Blackstock. Thanks for watching Inside Sports. We'll see you next time.